Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris and I am so excited that you chose to click on this video and watch it. In today's video is a collaboration, but I will get more into that later on in the video. So with all that being said, let's continue. All right, so this first one are these spindles that Kendra sent, and we got to do something with those. And the first thing I believe I'm gonna do is this one is a little cockeyed, so I'm going to go downstairs to my miter saw and I am just going to make this flush. So after I get those back upstairs, I'm going to go ahead and sand off some of the rough spots on these spindles, and then I'm going to go ahead and clean up with just an all-purpose cleaning solution. And when I was cleaning, I did notice a lot of bleeding. So I'm going to go ahead and take this primer from Couture, and I'm going to go ahead and apply, I believe I ended up doing about 3 coats, and that's because one of them was so stubborn it kept wanting to bleed through the primer. So once I get that all dried, I realize you forgot to put your bases on these. So I've got these little wood rounds that I pick up from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just going to go ahead and drill a hole in the center. I'm going to go ahead and insert some screws, drill a hole in the spindle where I want to screw these on. And when I'm doing this, I like to have that screw poking through the bottom of that bottom piece, the round piece. That way I can twist them onto my spindle and just go back in and tighten it up with my drill, and voila. And then I'm just going to go ahead and apply a coat of primer to those as well. Okay. After I fixed this one, I had it on upside down. I wanted this part on the top, and you'll see why after a bit, but I had to fix that and repaint it. So I'm ready for the crackle. And I'm going to be using the Folk Art Crackle Medium, and the directions just say to apply 1 coat, so that's what I'm going to do. And once that layer of Crackle Medium is dried, I'm going to take the color Americana. That is a DIY cottage color. And I do get all my DIY products from Unicorn Dust Designs. Unless she's out of them and I need it quick, then I will go to the Painted Heirloom. And I have both of those linked in my description box below. Now, when you're applying this stuff, you want to do pretty much 1 swipe, if at all possible, because you see right there, when it hit it a couple times and it kind of messes it up. It's really weird. So one swipe. You can probably get away with 2, but yeah. But it's very pretty. Look at this crackle. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I found these 2 frames at my local thrift store for 50 cents a piece, plus 25% off. So hey, score there. Never overlook your thrift stores. I know a lot of people love Dollar Tree projects, and I do too. I love a good Dollar Tree project, which I do on my channel, but I never overlook my thrift stores because I also like to upcycle. But I'm just going to go ahead and take these apart, take the glass out, and I want to dress them up. So I have got this IOD trimmings mold, the number 2, and I am going to use the little trimming mold that has the flowers in there. And I'm going to take some air dry clay and I'm going to roll that around in my hands, mainly to warm it up in order to make it more pliable. And then I'm just going to kind of roll it into a little tube, and then that way I can press it down into my mold. And I try to remove as much along the sides because these molds have a little micro edge and it makes it easier to remove any excess. So after I do that, I'm going to take this little chopper that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, and I am just going to scrape along the top, evening and flattening it out. That way when I glue it down, it has a nice flat surface. And let me tell you, if you don't have one of these choppers, go grab you one because these are very versatile. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these on top of the frame, and I am going to do little miter cuts. So pretty much just take my chopper at an angle and just trim those off. And you see what I'm doing right here. We're just going to repeat that process on all 4 corners. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take some Titebond Quick and Thick, and I'm going to smooth that out with my fingers and place it on the frame. And once I got that complete and it was all set up and dry, I went ahead and put a coat of white paint on it. Since it didn't need a primer, I just used a white paint, and I didn't like the way it looked because the top of the frame was rough and the sides were too smooth. I just thought it clashed too much. So I'm going to go ahead and take my paint and I'm going to mix it with some salt wash. You can also use baking soda. You can also use sand. Any of that stuff will work. I think sand would actually have looked even better. But I'm going to go ahead and mix that up, and then I'm going to apply that onto the sides and also make sure I get around the inside of the frame so it all looks cohesive. And as I'm putting the paint down, I do tend to do a pouncing motion just to give it a little more texture. And after that white paint is dried, I am then again going to take the color Americana, and I'm going to use a chippy brush, and I am just going to apply that kind of a dry brush manner just to duplicate that crackle look, because I didn't want to use the crackle medium on this part. And it is a very close appearance. I don't even think you can tell the difference. Okay, I have got an assortment of knobs. I picked these up at Hobby Lobby. But what I want to do is insert these into here, kind of at an angle, just a slight angle. But the first thing I'm going to do is I went ahead and I marked 4 spots already. Okay, so this one's going to go there, and then I have one over here. And I only want to go so far down, so I'm going to put some tape around my drill bit so I don't go past that. Just going to be about right there. I don't want to go past that. And that's just going to be my reference point. See, I went ahead and put the screw just to mark how far I wanted it to go in. All right, so, and I'm doing that with the tall skinny one. I have plans for the other one, different hardware. The drill bit I'm using is a 9/64 drill bit, but go ahead and save yourself some time and aggravation and bump it up to a 5/32, I believe. If that's not right, I'll put the information right here on the screen. But I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill all those holes, and then I'll periodically make sure that my knobs are going to fit in there, and when they do, I will proceed. And before I put those knobs in there, I am going to go ahead and take a 1/8 inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill right on the top of that spindle, right in the center, and I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other one as well. And then my picture frames, I'm going to have to pre-drill a hole so I can put a screw through there. And I'm going to use my drill bit to go ahead and do that. I'm going to mark center. And then because it's at an angle, I'm going to go a little bit in front of the hole that I marked. That way it'll pretty much hit dead center. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start by screwing them down by hand until they catch. And then I'm going to take some pliers, I guess is what these are called, a wrench. I can't remember. I do this all the time. But I find if you grip the screw part and then twist the spindle, those go in a lot easier. It's easier on your hands. And I would have used something different, but this was all I had upstairs. And I didn't like the way that the screw part was exposed, so I'm just going to take some twine and I'm going to wrap that around, glue it in place with some hot glue. And I think I might have forgot to mention that when I put those knobs into the spindle, I did squirt some tacky glue into the holes before I screwed those in. And then after I get that twine wrapped around the knobs, I'm going to go ahead and just take a lighter and singe off some of those furry, hairy looking things. And for the other spindle, I am just going to go ahead and drill a pilot hole on all 4 sides of the top. And I'm going to use this hardware that I also picked up from Hobby Lobby. And I'm going to go ahead and screw those in. And this is going to be where she can hang off some necklaces. She can even hang bracelets or rings. Okay, and for one of the picture frames, I've got these cork strips, and I'll be sure to link those in the description box. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to measure and cut these strips so it will fit inside that picture frame because the width is perfect. And these cork strips make perfect earring holders. And the trick is going to be to get these cork strips to fit in there snugly. So if you happen to cut off too much, you may end up having to use a little bit of tacky glue just to tack it in certain areas so it will stay put. But I cut mine just perfect to where I had to actually squeeze it in there so it's not going anywhere. And then once I got that cork in there, I realized, duh, Chris, you've got to put the frame on top of the spindle first because you're going to be screwing it in and that cork's going to be in the way. So I have to remove it. And once I take it out, I am trying to figure out how in the world I'm going to get this screwed because I don't have a drill bit that is at an angle. But I went ahead and I did manage to get it screwed in there with my drill. And once I got it in there enough, I went ahead and hand tightened my frame to the spindle. And then when I was trying to tighten it down, that's when I realized this is not going to work. This is no. So, okay, I have to go find my tool set my husband gave me. See, honey, I'm using the tools you gave me. Sorry, I had to leave that in there so my husband knows I use these tools he bought me. But he gave me this little ratchet set, and let me tell you, I am kicking myself right now that I haven't had this upstairs with me this whole time because these things are handy, but it made it so much easier to hand ratchet those screws down into place, and then I can pop that cork back in there. And I decided I wanted to go ahead and do something with the back, so I've got some cardstock here that I'm just going to cut out. I would have used a black, but I didn't have any black cardstock, so this was the closest color I had that I thought would look okay. And yeah, I just traced that out and put that in there, and I use the little sticky piece on the back of the cork as the adhesive to hold that in place. And let me tell you, that stuff is really sticky, so it worked out perfectly. And once I got that done, I move on to the other spindle, and I just screwed that picture frame on in place just like I did the first one. And this one is where she can just put a photo in. So I just reassemble that with some of the same cardstock and put that together. All right, so Kendra also sent this little copper tag. It's a little copper metal tag that had to be used. So I am going to go ahead and prep this stencil, an inspirational saying on it for my granddaughter. And I just make the stencil out of my Cricut and place it on there and then stencil it. And I'm not going to bore you with all of that. And then Kendra also sent some chiffon ribbon. And if you guys have been watching her channel, you know she loves her chiffon. But I'm just going to go ahead and loop this as the hanger. And nothing too crazy. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in there. I tie it twice. And then just put a little knot at the top. And voila, that is complete. She's got a little bit of inspiration from her grandma. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed DIY number 1. I think that might be my second favorite. I'm going to save the best for last, so make sure you hang on in here. But as I stated in the beginning, this video is a collaboration. I was invited by my friend Kendra at Late Night Creations to participate in Crafting with Friends, and she sends out items to the 2 people that she wants to craft with, and it's all the same items, and then us 3 have to figure out what we're going to make with them. And I'm so excited to see what we 3 come up with and how different we craft. And if you guys are just coming in from the playlist, I want to welcome you. I hope you will consider hitting that subscribe button and becoming part of my DIY family. I do post at least 1 video per week most of the time, but this year I'm going to try to do more than that. So fingers crossed I can pull it off. I just want to grow this channel. I want it to be the place where people can go for inspiration, and I'm just looking forward to 2025. And for all of my returning subscribers, thank you again so much. I know I tell you in almost every video how much I love you, but I honestly mean that from the bottom of my heart. Without you guys, I wouldn't be inspired myself to put out these videos. So thank you, and I love you guys. And with all that being said, let's continue. And the next item that I have gotten from Kendra that I have to craft with is this picture frame from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to go ahead and start by removing all of the insides because we are not going to need that. And unfortunately, I kind of broke this little piece right here, but that's okay. It works out. And then I grabbed this splatter screen from the Dollar Tree, and I am going to go ahead and trace the top part of that picture frame onto the screen. And Kendra also sent me this tape measure. So thank you so much, Kendra. You are a sweetheart. I am so glad we became friends. But like I said, I'm just going to trace out the screen and then I'm going to cut it out. And I started trying to use my X-Acto knife to cut and it would not go through it. So then I grabbed my little bitty fine tip scissors and I was able to get it inside one of those little holes the little mesh screen has and start by cutting a little slit. That way I can take my big scissors and just finish cutting that out. And then the next thing I did was I went ahead and made a stencil off of my Cricut machine. And let me tell you, it was tricky to put this on there. It did not want to stick down. I'm thinking maybe if I would have used more of a permanent vinyl, maybe it would have stuck better, but I'm not sure because I didn't try it. But I did manage to get it down, and then I just stenciled that image on there like you normally would. And then when I pulled the stencil off after applying the paint, I just was like, okay, you can't really see it in my opinion. So I was like, well, let me try this Sharpie. And I went ahead and outlined the letters in the image with the black Sharpie. And then after I got that black Sharpie on, I was like, well, you still really can't see the purple. The black kind of stands out well. What else can I do? And I was like, oh, I have a purple Sharpie. So why didn't I use this in the beginning? So then I went over the image with the purple Sharpie. And then I would notice that a lot of like the ink or the paint would kind of glob up in the little holes on the mesh. So I would use some sort of picking tool and I would just kind of poke in through those holes. And that worked very well. But I wish I would have skipped this step, but I couldn't do it over because what was done unless I went and got another photo frame, but I couldn't find one. And yeah, by that time I'd already glued this one in place. So once I got that done, it's time to put the screen in the photo frame. And I am just pushing it in there, making sure the edges of the screen are tucked in there. And then I'm going to take some Eileen's tacky glue and I'm going to go around the edge of it. And then I'm going to take the other piece, the piece that I broke, and I'm going to push that onto the screen. And it just kind of pushes that screen together into the two frames. And when you're pushing that piece down, you're going to need to really work with it to get it on top of that screen and pushed in. So I spent a little bit of time just pushing it in, and then I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to let it dry. And I believe I let it dry overnight. All right, so once that's dried, I picked this candle holder up from the Dollar Tree, and I want that to be the stand to this frame. And this frame is going to be an earring holder. And the only problem is that area right there is, dipped down. So there's not a whole lot of surface for this frame to adhere to. And then in the space in front of the frame, I wanted it to be just a little holder where she could like daily earrings or rings in. So the only thing I could think of that I had on hand that I could mold was clay. So I went ahead and grabbed some clay and just kind of molded that to where it would fit on the back side of that dip on top. That way my frame will sit on top of it. It will have that little space in the front. And so I just worked with the clay, got it in there, and I'll use a combination of items just to get that in the shape that I want it. I will use my little picking tool to trace out a line of where I want to cut, and then I'm going to use this little spatula clay tool to cut it out. And then I'm going to go ahead and dampen my fingers. That way I can smooth that clay out. And then I will put the frame on there, and that frame will leave a little indentation of where I'm going to be putting it in there. And I just wanted to make sure it looked okay. Then I'm going to use that spatula tool to pull that piece of clay back out of there, make sure it's got its shape and it's smoothed out. And then I'm just going to use some Eileen's tacky glue and glue that into place. And then I'm just going to take a baby wipe and kind of go around the edges to make sure I've got a nice crisp, clean appearance. Okay, so I let this dry overnight. Seems like everything's sticking. I normally paint my clay before it dries, but I was afraid to mess with it too much. So I don't want to paint where I'm going to be applying this sign, so I'm just going to mark with a pencil. And then I'm just going to apply some Heirloom Traditions iron ore, I believe is what it's called. If it's any different, I'll put it on the screen. And that's a really close black color to this frame. So I just went ahead and painted the surface that's not going to be covered by that picture frame. And then I'm also going to paint inside the little concave area just so it looks cohesive. And while that paint's drying, I've got this little finial that at one time I had painted and glued, and well, now I'm just going to reuse it, and I'm going to remove the glue that's on there, and I'm going to go ahead and paint it in this light lavender from Folk Art. And then I'm just going to use some tacky glue and adhere that finial right on the center of the top of that frame. Okay, so I went ahead and I super glued this to right there. I used some clamps to hold it. I'm going to go ahead and still keep those because I don't know if it's completely set up. Now, just a little bit of advice. Don't use the super glue. It ended up falling off and breaking the clay where the super glue was. So I did end up using some tacky glue, and hopefully that will hold up. But Kendra also sent some ribbon and some buttons that I have to use in my projects. So I am just going to tie just a little ribbon on the top of the finial and apply a button. All right, and this is the last item, and this is my favorite. And Kendra sent this book, and you're definitely going to need some clamps and some Mod Podge for this project. And I'm just going to clamp those out of the way so I can paint the back of the inside cover. And I am using the black color in the iron ore from Heirloom Traditions. And once that is all dry, I'm just going to remove those clamps. And I'm going to take the first 3 pages and clamp those to the front cover of the book, just so they are out of the way. And I am going to use some saran wrap to keep pages that I don't want glued away from the pages that have glue on them, just as a precaution. Now, if you have a wax paper, that would be the easiest thing to do, so you don't have to fight with the saran wrap, which I didn't have any wax paper. All right, and then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just using some matte Mod Podge, and I am going to take the pages that we did not clamp, and I am going to go around all 3 edges with that Mod Podge and apply it. And after I apply the Mod Podge to all 3 edges, if there are any pages that are stuck up, I'll add a little bit more glue, and then I'm going to clamp those pages together, and I am going to close the book, making sure that saran wrap's in there so those other pages do not stick. I'm also going to put one on the back side so that doesn't stick to the hardcover. And I'm going to put some weight on the top of the book and let that dry overnight. All right, so the next day I opened the book and I could not believe how hard that Mod Podge made those books. I mean, it's solid. So what I'm going to do is remove the saran wrap, and then I'm going to cut a square into the pages that we Mod Podged together. And I'm going to go 1 inch inward on all 4 sides. Okay, so I'm going to start with an X-Acto knife, and I'm just going to start slicing through those pages. And of course, you're not going to be able to go through the whole thing unless you are mighty strong and have something really heavy duty to slice through all those pages at once. So you're going to have to do it in sections. So I'll just kind of score over as much as I can, pull the pages out. I also alternate between my X-Acto knife and a box knife until I get a little further down, because once I get further down with those pages, the box knife is a little bit more difficult to get in there. But I'm just going to keep on doing this until I get through all the pages. All right, so after I got all those pages scored all the way through, a couple of my pages did not stick very well, so I'm going to go back over those areas with more Mod Podge, just kind of getting my brush down in between those pages and then going around the edges once again and clamping it back down into place. And once that's had a chance to dry, I'm just going to go ahead and remove those clamps. And then I've got this image that I had got off of Creative Fabrica. I printed it out on some heavy duty cardstock, and I am going to want to use this as the top page. So when she opens this book, that's the first page there. And I'm going to be adhering this to the pages I did not glue together. Now I did set aside 3 pages for that. However, I ended up nicking my finger a little bit when cutting through, so I got a little bit of stain on that one top page of where we cut. So I'm going to have to use one of those pages to adhere to the top. You can see what I'm doing right here. I'm just going to use that top page and I'm going to adhere it down just to cover up the one that has the stain on it. And then I'll also trim that out. And then I'm just going to make sure I get that all smoothed down and reapply some more Mod Podge to the edges. And once that's dried, I'm going to go ahead and take some Mod Podge around the inside of where we cut out. And then I'm just going to clean the inside of the back cover and apply some Eileen's tacky glue to the pages we cut out. And I'm going to adhere that to that cover. And then I'm just going to put some weight on it and allow that to dry. All right, and after that's all dry, I've got these gigantic wood sticks that I picked up from Walmart. And I'm just going to cut those down so we can use it to put along the inside just to frame it out. To me, it just gives it a little bit more of a professional appearance. And I'm just going to use a pair of scissors to cut those down with. And then after I get those cut down and I got them put in there, I noticed, oh, well, they're a little too tall, so my book doesn't close all the way. So I do end up having to make them a little narrower. So when I put those in there, that book will lay flat. And it's pretty easy to do. It did take me a couple pieces of these wood sticks to get one that didn't split. So, you know, if you can find a piece of wood or something that you can trim down that's the right height, then that would be optimal. Now keep in mind, as far as the thickness of what you're going to need and the width of what you're going to need, it's just going to depend on how thick your book is. So after I've got those sticks cut to size, the first thing I'm going to do before I put them in there is just Mod Podge around the top. That way, when I'm sticking those in there, I don't tear anything. At least that was the hopes. and I didn't tear anything. So after I get that Mod Podged, I'm going to let that dry down, and then I'm just going to go ahead and use some wood glue, and I'm going to glue those wood pieces down in place. And when I put those wood sticks in there, I'm just going to use some clamps to adhere on the 3 sides. And unfortunately, the side closest to the binding part of the book, I could not get a clamp in there, so I just decided to apply pressure and hold it in place until it's set up. All right, so moving on to the outside of the book, I'm going to take the color Plaster and I'm going to go ahead and paint the top of the front cover. And I didn't go along the whole area. I probably should have. It might have made the next step easier, but I didn't. And you'll see where I stopped. But pretty much just to frame it out, because I want to put this image that I printed out on some tissue paper from Creative Fabrica right on the top of the book. And to cut that image completely out, I don't want a straight cut. So I am going to attempt to use my water pen, but for some reason that water was not getting up there in the brush area. So I just went to a paintbrush and some water and just trimmed it out. And before I put on that image, I'm going to go ahead and open the book, and on the inside of the front cover, I'm going to put a coat or two of the black paint. Now, once that's dried, I do go ahead, in case it's not dry in some spots, and I do put like a cardstock in between the pages just to make sure. But I'm going to go ahead and, since I've got the black out, go ahead and flip it around to the front. And on that cover, I'm just going to kind of, where I put that white, just go around the outer edge part with some black. I'm also going to paint around the edges of that cover with that black, just so it all looks cohesive. And then I will also paint the side where the binding is. And then once that's all dried, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the front of the book. I'm going to apply some Mod Podge, dry it down with my heat gun. And then I'm going to place that tissue paper on top and then press it down with my iron, reactivating that Mod Podge. That way I can get the most wrinkle-free image I can possibly get. And I do find that method works the best. And then once that paper is on there, I want it to look a little bit more blended. So I'm going to take this makeup sponge and some of that black paint, and I am just going to go and start dabbing around the outer edges of the paper, just blending it in. And then when I'm finished with that, this is where I go ahead and Mod Podge that cardstock I had printed the image on from Creative Fabrica to those top two pages. And I just, like I said, I use Mod Podge. I have a paint can back holding that lid up just so I can see the seam better and make sure I get that cardstock pushed as far back into that back cover as I can. And then after I get that cardstock to the top page, I'll take the remaining pages and I'll Mod Podge them together as well. And then I do apply a coat of Mod Podge around the inside and outside pages, just to make sure it's nice and sealed. And then I'm just going to allow that to dry, putting some cardstock in there to protect it from sticking to where I don't want it to stick, and put some weight on the top. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply a layer of Mod Podge to the front of the book. And I have got these caps off of the hot sauce, the Cholula hot sauce. And I've been saving these up because my husband, that's the only hot sauce he likes. But I've been saving these up, and I've got 4 of them. And I thought they'd make great feet. So I am going to go ahead and adhere that. I start out using Titebond. I don't recommend Titebond. It did not hold. They ended up falling off. A couple of them fell off when I gave this to my granddaughter. And so I had to go and re-glue them all. And they eventually, all 4 of them fell off. So I ended up using Eileen's tacky glue, and that seemed to work a lot better, believe it or not. So I think once I get through this Titebond, I may just end up using the tacky glue for the remainder of my projects. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out this little saying that I came up with off of my Cricut. I would normally do a stencil, but I was running out of time. These were going to be Christmas gifts, and when I was finishing these projects up, it was already the 23rd. So I still had to finish letting them dry down completely, wrap them up, and get it all ready. So I was really pushed for time. So I just went ahead and made a decal. And this is what it says: music makes the heart smile. I think that turned out really well. My granddaughter, one of the seniors, is graduating high school. So I'm going to take another decal that I created off of my Cricut machine, just a little saying that I came up with. so I can put on the inside of the top cover. So when she opens it, she just has a little bit of inspiration and she's reminded of how proud I am of her. This young lady has been playing the trumpet since she was in the 6th grade. Of course, like I said, she is a senior now. And she actually taught herself to play the guitar. And she loves the guitar. That's her instrument of choice. She plays it every day. And she is an outstanding young lady. I'm so proud of her. She's been offered a full scholarship if she wanted to study music, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants to become a veterinarian. So she's taking a partial scholarship from a university, and she's applying for other scholarships to help make up the difference. But I'm so proud of her, and I just wanted her to know how proud I am. So this just says, when you're sad, play it loud, and always know you make me proud, because she does. She makes me so proud. I'm so proud of her. All right, that concludes today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget, leave me that big thumbs up. Make sure you leave me a comment in the description box and let me know which of these 3 was your favorite.